Sweet. Prayer of the day. O Lord Jesus, make us instruments of your peace, that where there is hatred, we may sow love, where there is injury, pardon, and where there is despair, hope. Grant, O Divine Master, that we may seek to console, to understand, and to love in your name. For you live and reign with the Father and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
There's a chef there. Oh, you can.
Morning, Diane. Well, it's a good story. Who wants to read it?
I'll be glad to read it. Genesis 45. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, so dismayed were they at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, Come closer to me. And they came closer. He said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are 5 more years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. You shall settle in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children, as well as your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. I will provide for you there, since there are 5 more years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have will not come to poverty. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them, and after that his brothers talked with him.
I may be stupid, but is this the same Joseph, the father of Jesus?
No.
This is a different one.
This is one of the 12 sons.
Joseph and the Technicolor green coat.
Oh, Jacob's sons. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you have to remember the big origin of the story, where the brothers are jealous of Joseph and sell him out, sell him down the river to Egypt. And Joseph comes into fame in Egypt because of his dream interpretation abilities, interprets dreams for the prisoners, and then he interprets dreams for Pharaoh. Pharaoh is kind of taken by him a little bit, not a little bit, but a lot. He comes into power in Pharaoh's court, a lot of power, and he encounters his brothers. And the tension in the story is always, is he going to forgive his brothers? And he still has not technically forgiven them, although he's acting as if he will here in this scene. So you can imagine the power of the story is that Joseph had every reason to just kind of turn his back to his brothers. He had every reason in today's society 99% of the time, I'm sure that probably would happen, but this guy is different. And so, there's a lesson in there for that. But it's really kind of a powerful story about forgiveness, because not only does he forgive them, but he provides for them, their flock, their herds, and all that you have. And it's just kind of an amazing story.
Goes with the prayer of the day. When there's injury, pardon.
Yeah.
Well, the book of Genesis reveals several examples of sibling conflict, beginning with Cain and Abel in Eden, and followed by Isaac and Ishmael, when Ishmael was sent away by Abraham and Sarah.
Yeah.
And but there was reconciliation also, because Isaac and Ishmael joined together to bury their father Abraham. So somewhere along the line they reconciled. And the conflict between Jacob and Esau, was another example. When Jacob took Esau's birthright, or bought it or something,
Yeah,
got
that
it
was a
from
big
it.
one.
And then later, he, through his mother, stole his brother's blessing, which was supposed to go to the eldest. But yet later, Esau, when Jacob was returning back, Esau was ready to reconcile with Jacob. And then, now we're studying about Joseph. And he was ready to reconcile with his brothers after what they had done to them. So reconciliation is important in this lesson. And then also, one of the commentaries I read said, Joseph himself, though, is still flawed. He used the famine. Now, he, did wonders for his own family, but he used the famine to prey upon the Egyptian people. And when they were in need of food, he made them sell their grain to Pharaoh, in place of food. And then the next time they needed food, he had them sell their livestock. And the third time they needed food, they had to give up their property. So they became enslaved as a result. So he wasn't perfect in that regard. They became enslaved to Pharaoh because they had given up everything. He arranged for them to give up everything.
Well, I think that those three steps that the Egyptian people took is really pointing to what Christ wants us to do. He wants us to rely on him. And that's what Joseph is getting the Egyptian people to do, is to rely on Pharaoh, rely on their leader, and hopefully point the way that they could rely on God for everything that they had. So I don't know, Pastor,
No, I go. You guys, by all means, this is good. To me, I mean, the only thing I was going to point out is that this entire weekend is about forgiveness and loving your enemies, which I think is a challenge it's a challenge. It's a big time challenge.
It's difficult to do.
Yeah, I wonder what's going on in the hearts and minds of the Ukrainians right now.
Right.
And
look at the fear that they're living
yeah, and there's so many connections between Russia and Ukraine. I just wonder what's going to be there. It's going through their psyche right now. And will there be forgiveness for what Russia's doing? But that's,
Well, there's probably many of them that still have the ties to Russia and relatives in both places, and
yeah.
probably thinking, "Come on, we want to be part of Big Brother." But,
Yeah, there's some of that
but
too.
there's so many others that just don't want to give up the independence that they have had for the last 30, 40 years. 1980 something, 88.
Yeah.
You know, I think that going back to pointing out, leading these people to rely on God for what they want and need, I think that's why Jesus talks about how hard it is for a rich man to get to heaven, because if you have more than enough to survive, you start relying on yourself, and you start thinking, well, I need this and I need to do that, and we forget that we owe God everything that we have.
You know, that's an important point too. I mean, Joseph, I know he kind of pointed out that he's kind of a scoundrel too, but when we realize that everything that we have is from God, then it makes it a lot easier to share.
And he had, he'd gone through a lot of tribulations. First he has this great job with Potiphar.
Yeah.
Then, that gets messed up. He gets thrown in prison, and he lives through that, and he becomes has the dreams and becomes the ruler of all of Egypt, really second in command to Pharaoh. And God pointed him to the fact that he put him through all this stuff so that he could be here at this time to save his family.
Mm-hmm.
And
Jacob was kind of responsible. You shouldn't have a favorite kid. And he was showing favoritism to Joseph.
I know.
And if he hadn't done that, maybe none of that would have happened.
Yeah, I think a lot of the brotherly strife you were talking about, a lot of that happened when the father had a favorite wife, so then therefore her children was his favorite son.
Yeah.
Right, that was same thing with Joseph.
Right.
His mother was the preferred one.
I think if you have more than one child,
If you have more than one wife, you're in trouble.
Boy, isn't that the
That's
truth.
why we don't do that anymore.
Anyway, if you have more than one of anything, you're going to have a favorite.
But you should.
Well, I didn't say you should. I just say you're going to have a favorite. And you, as a parent, you just can't show that, because if you have two sons, one's probably more athletic, one's probably more intelligent, and it just. And I have 4 children, and I have a different favorite every day,
The best line in this entire story, and when Joseph forgives the brothers, he says to them, but Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God?" And then he says this line, which is just pure gold. "Even though you intended to do harm to me, God intended it for good." Mm-hmm. And so, to me, he's extending not only his forgiveness, but he's extending the gift of God's kingdom to his brothers. That when we forgive, forgiveness is a gift that we give, but it's sourced in the gift that God gives to us. And the other piece to that line is that even though we as human beings are flawed and have malintent sometimes, God can work through the dysfunction and brokenness to bring you in. And so to have faith in that, I think, is really powerful. But I've always been fascinated with that saying from Joseph, because how many times, we in our own lives have struggled with forgiveness, and yet we can give it over to God and let God forgive. And I think that's a really helpful dynamic system.
Psalm talks even more about evildoers.
We go to that.
I'll read it. Okay. Do not be provoked by evildoers. Do not be jealous of those who do wrong. Put your trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and find safe pasture. Take delight in the Lord, who shall give you your heart's desire. Commit your way to the Lord. Put your trust in the Lord and see what God will do. The Lord will make your vindication as clear as the light, and the justice of your case like the noonday sun. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently. Do not be provoked by the one who prospers, the one who succeeds in evil schemes. Refrain from anger and rage alone. Do not be provoked, it leads only to evil. For evildoers shall be cut off, but those who hope in the Lord shall possess the land. In a little while the wicked shall be no more. Even if you search out their place, they will not be there. But the lowly shall possess the land. They will delight in abundance of peace. But the deliverance of the righteous comes from you, O Lord. You are their stronghold in time of trouble. You, O Lord, will help them and rescue them. You will rescue them from the wicked and of their enemies, because in you is refuge. That's a Freudian slip. In a little while, the wicked shall be no more. When is that little while going to come?
It's so hard sometimes to wait for Jesus to come back and take care of all those evildoers, and you can see them prosper, and how can that horrible person succeed? I think God has a plan, and He wants us to trust in Him and not trust in the evil ways of this earth. World.
Well, this sentence is the, crux of the whole thing. Is, but the deliverance of the righteous come from you, O Lord. You are their stronghold in time of trouble. And it's exactly what you said earlier.
Yeah, I think it takes tremendous faith on our parts to be able to extend the gift of forgiveness to others, because if you forgive someone for their wrongdoing, you're still vulnerable to them doing more wrongdoing, and you have to at some point give that to God and just trust that God is working in the situation, I guess. I mean,
You almost have to pray beforehand with help, asking for help to do that,
yes.
to forgive.
And the other thing, I like the line that says, "Take delight in the Lord, who shall give you your heart's desire." midst of maybe the struggle with forgiveness, just putting trust in God that your heart is in the right place too is helpful.
Is time equal God?
Time equal God. I think God works on God's own time, and we work on our time.
That's true.
I never thought of it that way, but I think if you understand that in time, because if you give God enough time, He's going to show you why He's doing all that He's doing. He's given me some pretty nice gifts, but at the time I didn't recognize them as wonderful gifts that they were. Putting faith in Him, and over time, I came to realize what wonderful gifts that they've already given. We, of course, want it now. And I prayed for you to give me this. God, give it to me exactly what I thought I wanted.
Yeah. Or like Joseph saying, like forgiving his brothers and saying, God has used this for good. Like, this was several years, like a whole lifetime later that he's saying these things. Like he did have some time to process and like recognize the good that came from these terrible things his brothers did to him.
When he was sitting in the well, he probably wasn't thinking.
Right.
Well, that is the one part of the story of Joseph. Like, that he had the leverage. I mean, he was sitting in the high seat, and you sometimes wonder if that's an easy position to extend forgiveness from.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in the lower realms of the world, then maybe it's a little more of a challenge. So it'd be interesting to see if Joseph would still say the same thing had he not rose to the success that he had.
Yeah.
So there is that. But
and like the reconciliation also happens like because they are very sorry and very afraid of him.
mm-hmm.
Like imagine if they had come and laughed at him or something, would he still have forgiven them and given them this generous gift? Yeah.
And you have to imagine too that they were just kids when this happened. And everybody matures and moves on, and maybe Joseph just realized that this is in a different context, and now we can be adults and work through this. I don't know. So. Well, let's get to some good stuff here.
First Corinthians 15. But someone will ask, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body do they come? Fool, what you sow does not come to life unless it dies. And as for what you sow, you do not sow the body that is to be, but a bare seed, perhaps of wheat or of some other grain. But God gives it a body as He has chosen, and to each kind of seed its own body. So it is with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable. What is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown a physical body. It is raised a spiritual body. If there is a physical body, there is also a spiritual body. Thus it is written, The first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. But it is not the spiritual that is first, but the physical, and then the spiritual. The first man was from the earth, a man of dust. The second man is from heaven. As was the man of dust, so are those who are of the dust. And as is the man of heaven, so are those who are of heaven. Just as we have borne the image of the man of dust, we also bear the image of the man of heaven. What I am saying, brothers and sisters, is this: flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does the perishable inherit the imperishable.
Might as well just go on and read the rest, because he says, "Listen, I will tell you a mystery. We will not all die, but we will all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. The trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. For this perishable body must put on imperishability, and this mortal body must put on immortality." I mean, and this is, he just goes on to talk about the perishable body versus the imperishable body, and then he quotes what does he quote? Isaiah 25, and he says, "Death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting?" And this is one of those texts you often hear read at a funeral, or upon the occasion of someone's death, and it speaks to the promise of the imperishable, the new life, the resurrected body, and Paul in 1 Corinthians really talks a lot about bodies, and Paul is fascinated with the body because the Corinthians are fascinated with bodies, and the Stoics in particular were really fascinated by the perfect male body. If you look at some of the Hellenistic statues at the time, I mean, what do those statues portray? They portray someone of good physique and good health. The Corinthians were absolutely fascinated by that. It's not just Americans this way. The Corinthians were. They modeled their art after it, and so he's using that cultural ideal as an illustration for talking about the spiritual body. And what he's telling them is, you guys put so much focus. What he's really saying is, think about all of the focus you put on the human body and how perfect you want that to be. Well, guess how much more perfect the spiritual body is, and how much more valuable that is. And then in the same token, he talks about the body of Christ, and what does Paul lift up as the most important part of the body of Christ, but the weakest. And so Paul is really trying to school the Corinthians on what that means in terms of welcoming the poor and the hungry, and the least of these. It's a Christian ideal. Lifting them up is an important part of the entire corpus of the worship community. If you go and you study just how much they focused on the body, it's astounding. And you think they could be in 21st century North America. I mean, they are. You look at our advertisements for, how much focus is on, yeah.
Well, you relate Corinth was a very wealthy city, because of shipping and
That's
another
true.
part of
Sure.
Greece, which has a long, illustrious history and prospered for a long time before, Rome came into being. So there's a lot of correlation between the wealth and where we put our faith or our desire.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, those, it was all about being, for the Stoics, it was about attaining the perfect body and the perfect mind. I mean, that was their goal. And that was very much a part of the energy and the culture that he's talking to. And so these folks would have been inundated with that ideal, and he's using that to really talk about the resurrection of the dead. And he's reminding them that body that you see that's perfect and that statue right there, guess what? It dies.
Yeah.
It dies. And then what do you have? You have to have faith in the resurrected body. So,
What does it mean by the first Adam and the last Adam?
good question. The first Adam, well, and especially in Luke's gospel, Luke talks about Jesus as the new Adam.
Okay.
So
As the who?
the new Adam.
Oh, okay.
So the old Adam is a perishable, broken, sinful man. The new Adam is a renewed man, a resurrected. It's the image of, it's the Imago Dei, the image of God, the man that God, the spiritual man. And I shouldn't say just man, it's one man. Adam as a Hebrew word means man. Adam is man, but it's really mankind. The first man was from the earth, a man of dust. The second man is from heaven. As was the man of dust, so are those who are of the dust, and as is the man of heaven, so are those who are of heaven. I mean, in a couple of weeks, you're going to get ashes on your face. Pastor's going to say, make the sign of the cross on your forehead and say, remember that you are dust. As a dust you shall return. This body is dust. Our spiritual selves will be resurrected. So we can let go of the dusty body because we're promised something new. The new Adam, the new Adam.
Yeah, because God took dust and created Adam.
Yeah.
But why didn't he do that with a woman? Then they would have been equal.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, those were patriarchal authors. But I think in the essence of Adam, encapsulated in Adam, is mankind. And not just a male, not just male mankind, but female. And we have a lot. I mean, the Bible is loaded with patriarchal language, and I'm almost apologetic about it as a white male guy. But
Well, that was the thinking at the time that this was written, I guess.
yeah, it doesn't mean, yeah. I mean,
I think it's all in the way you read it.
yeah, for sure.
It's, for a long time, I thought, won't it be wonderful when I'm reunited in heaven with my family, with Cindy, with my kids. But our spiritual body, once we get to heaven, we're going to recognize Christ, God. But I don't know if we recognize anybody else from this life. And why should we? I guess because it says we're going to be given a new body, a new life.
But we'll have such wisdom, we'll surely, I'm anxious to, not today, maybe, but I'm eager to see my loved ones again.
And I think even if they
My
don't have the
parents.
same physical body as you said, they're probably going to have some essence that you will recognize and be there.
Well, I mean, and Paul uses the word that I think that picks up on that is, where does it say that? I will tell you a mystery.
51.
Where is it? Oh yeah, there it is. Thank you. Listen, I will tell you a mystery. And I mean, so he's really saying, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I do know this is what I do know is that God promises us a resurrected body, and now as a pastor, you get to be in some pretty interesting places, right? So, I mean, I've been around enough people who, at the time of death, and relatives who have been with relatives at the time of death, that they share stories, and I've heard enough to really be confident in the fact that you're going to see your loved ones again.
As a nurse, you've seen some things too, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I always think of it like that there's a veil, sort of. And as people, being in oncology, as people get close to death, they start seeing their loved ones. And I mean, I know I've had people share stories with me. I know a lot of other nurses, and it's always comforting.
Yeah.
It's not a scary thing. It's a welcoming thing. It's a comforting thing.
I don't even know. I don't know if I can share this, but I guess I will. Bob Rohde, who used to sit in this table for Bible study, had a near-death experience a few months before he actually died, and he was able to articulate, who he saw. He shared it with other members of his congregation. He said the first person who welcomed him was his grandfather. Now, you can't dispute it. You can't. I mean, that's his experience. But I have to believe, and I've had enough of those other experiences. You have to believe that it is a mystery, but yeah, like you said, there's a veil there. And is it our brain that's showing us these things, or is this really happening? And the one thing I will say about this is that is not the resurrected body. Like, we might see loved ones after we die. That is not the resurrected loved one. The resurrection is a completely different promise. The resurrection is the promise of new world, new body, new everything. And what Scripture tells us is that there is one day of resurrection, and that day everybody will be resurrected. So, whatever happens in the interim, in the in-between, that's a mystery too. But there is enough to know that. And when you baptize that baby, and you say, I baptize you in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and you tell those parents, this is God's claim on that child, on your child. There is never a moment in that child's life or in that child's death where they are separated from God. So the earthly body dies. What happens? We don't know. Well, we're not separated from God ever. And that's a promise. And I think we can live with the mystery, knowing the promise. We're secular.
It sure would be nice to know.
Yeah. And you know, the older I get, I mean, I'm not the less, I don't know if you guys have the same experience or not, but the less I'm afraid of death, the older I get, but it's just a process of time. I'm looking forward to, you know, and the saying goodbye part of it, but knowing that we're in God's hands, I'm in God's hands, means a lot.
I think that's why God wants us to read this book and study this book and know this book instead of listening to somebody else tell us what's in this book. Because I think having knowledge takes away a lot of the fear, not just of death, but of the life we're living now. Because it tells us God is going to always be with us through this life, through the wait, and through our heavenly life. And if you go through death with somebody that you love, you can help a whole lot if God is part of that.
If what?
If God is part of that
Oh,
process.
yeah.
Well, and knowing and believing in the promise sure helps me to have a different frame of reference for the day that I'm living now. It's a much more hopeful outlook, right? Go to Luke here.
I'll read it. Jesus said, "But I say to you that listen, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you. And if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. Do to others as they would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much again. But love your enemies, do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. Your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. The merciful just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. And do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back."
Those first two lines are hard to follow. Love your enemies. Be good to those who hate you. Kind of hard to do.
Yeah, now you understand why they paired the Joseph story with Joseph becomes the illustration for teaching that Jesus does in the Sermon on the Plain in Luke's Gospel. I read this and I think this is an ideal that I can't live up to.
Right. It's awfully hard to live up to that.
Yeah, well, at the same token, it drives me to Christ. When, I mean, I know I can't do this. I know I can't. I mean,
No,
I
not
can.
help.
Huh?
I said, not without the help of,
Right. But it drives me to God. I mean, I have to go to God for that strength, and because on my own, this is darn near impossible.
There were two Christian psychologists and psychiatrists. They used to have an hour-long show on KGBI back in the dark ages before it was part of Grace. Now, unfortunately, it's part of Northwestern, which is another Christian university, but Northwestern and Iowa in Chicago.
That's a large city, isn't it?
I think
Yeah,
so.
I think so.
Anyway, they wrote a book, and I think the title was "Don't Let the Jerks of This World Get You Down." And basically, it was saying that if somebody harms you and you don't forgive them, they keep harming you for the rest of your life because you keep dwelling on it, you keep thinking about it, and they just keep hurting you forever. But if you give it up to God, forgive them, then you can let it go. And you said
That and this confused me that it can keep people in a cycle of abuse, of being abused.
no, you get out. You have to.
Yeah, what you're saying, it sounds like you get out and then you forgive. But I think
Yeah.
sometimes people stay in a cycle of abuse because they're like, okay, I'm afraid that there are some unscrupulous people that use that to keep people in a cycle of abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think forgiving someone does not mean that you stop pursuing justice. I totally see how this reading could be abused to keep abusing people.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And that's sometimes what's missing when we take out just these texts and skip all the other ones where Jesus is doing the justice, or we don't read them together to see that it's part of the same story. They're the forgiveness, what Rod was saying of you're letting it keep hurting you, but it doesn't mean that you don't still arrest your abuser or whatever. I think you can do the same. You can forgive them and still be seeking justice in the worldly ways that we know how to seek justice, which could include breaking the relationship or
In other words, could you forgive them and also forget them and not have any more to do with them?
Yeah.
Would that be acceptable?
Well, that would be the best way. I think forgiving somebody might be easier than forgetting, but it's the first step in that process to forget about the harm you've done and get on with your life. But as Greta said, it doesn't mean that you couldn't testify against them if it was something and see them in court and maybe dance on their grave, but but still,
But you're saying that holding that does more harm to you
Yeah.
than yeah.
Well, I think God's first goal is to promote life, and the health and safety of someone who's being abused is of utmost importance to God. And if the abuser doesn't stop the abuse, then get the heck away from them. right? That doesn't mean you still can't forgive. God gave us God gave animals and humans survival instincts, and part of that, I mean, that's a part of creation, and it's okay, but that doesn't mean you're going to stay in that cycle of abuse. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's the first thing. The second thing is then work the forgiveness out later.
The other way I was reading this, I was at this conference this past weekend in Minneapolis that is for youth leaders. So I do faith formation and family ministry. So I went, and one of the things one of my workshops said was, they sort of mentioned this jokingly, but if you're trying to start something new and you're getting a lot of pushback, you can't just do it, right? Meet with all of those people that are giving you the pushback, help, have them get familiar with what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it, and build a relationship so that even if they don't like the idea, they still trust you to try the new thing. And he jokingly said, pray for your enemies, love them. Really it works. And so if you think about this literally, less in abusive situations, but in your opponents of whatever the thing is, if you actually get to know them and build this relationship, then you no longer have to be opponents, right? So that literally, if you love your neighbor and pray for them and get to know them and work with them, then they're not going to be your opponent anymore. And I had never thought about it like that. Jesus isn't necessarily telling us to be pacifists and be doormats. He's saying it's very strategic to get to know the people that are opposing you.
Well, and when he says love your enemies, he doesn't say you have to like them.
Right.
I mean,
Does it mean respect? Yeah.
Well, love is not a feeling; it's an action. I mean, I can love someone and not like them.
Yeah.
In fact, I tell myself that all the time. Because we all have people we just don't, for whatever reason, they just are not likable to us. So it doesn't mean I don't love them.
Yeah. And how much more productive is it to be in a working relationship with them rather than just write them off and hate them?
Right.
But that also doesn't mean that we have to stand around and watch what they're doing and not stand up to them. I mean, even Jesus turned over the table in the temple of the money changers. Sometimes you have to take action when you see that people are harming other people in some way. It doesn't mean that you can't try and help them.
Yeah, I think there's a whole sermon here about what Jesus does not say, right? I mean, Jesus doesn't, he says love your enemies. He doesn't say you have to love their bad behaviors.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you don't have to stand up for justice and the poor decisions that they make, to let it go. I mean, that's a completely different thing. And I think it's also helpful to understand that, Jesus is on the Sermon on the Plain here, and very clearly, he looks up, what did it say he addressed the disciples? Yeah, verse 20. It says, then he looked up at his disciples and said, this is a specific teaching for the disciples. This isn't, he's got a crowd down here, and then he's got disciples up here. He's specifically addressing his disciples. Why? The question is, why is he saying this to his disciples?
He's training them.
He's training them. He's preparing them for Jerusalem.
Right.
He is preparing them for what is about to happen in Jerusalem. And what is about to happen in Jerusalem is a crucifixion. And I have to imagine that the disciples watching Pontius Pilate and Herod and the Roman soldiers and watching all these bozos put Jesus on the cross was not a warm, fuzzy feeling. Those are the enemies. He's telling them they're about to do this, but love them because I'm going to come back and I'm going to forgive them. As
And
crazy
even-
as that sounds.
He even said that on the cross. They do not know what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So this would have been scandalous for them to hear. I mean, this is not an easy teaching. And so, we read this and but you can't remove the context from these words because that's why he's saying these. Close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.